The tropics are active for June 20th. Good afternoon, I'm Mike Naso with the latest on the tropics. Tropical Storm Bret continues to move westward in the central Atlantic, and we have a wave behind Bret that we're watching very carefully. There's the visible satellite imagery. Right there is Bret, and Bret did look kind of disheveled overnight. After looking really good yesterday, it kind of became disheveled this morning, and now it's appearing to strengthen just a little bit as it moves on towards the west, and then there is that wave behind it that we will talk about. Here is the latest on Tropical Storm Bret from the National Hurricane Center down in Miami, Florida. As of 11 a.m. Atlantic time, Bret was at 11.9 north, 47.0 west, winds of 40, although as of 3 p.m. Eastern time, it looks like they're going to go up a little bit, probably to 45 or 50 miles per hour. It's moving to the west at 21 miles per hour, and the forecast no longer has Bret becoming a hurricane. It should continue west throughout Wednesday and Thursday, finally Friday move through the islands, somewhere in the vicinity of Martinique, south of Martinique, maybe St. Lucia, that area there north of Barbados, and then blow on through and dissipate by the weekend in the graveyard of the Eastern Caribbean, where many, many storms dissipate here in the Eastern and Central Caribbean, somewhere between Venezuela and the Dominican Republic. However, there is uncertainty. It could move on the southern edge of this cone, it could move on the northern edge, but overall it looks like the expectation for development is lower than it was yesterday, and I'll tell you why. Here are the computer models. Again, they're in really good agreement. Anytime you see tight agreement like this, that's a good indicator that the system's going to follow along that path. And with the high pressure built into the north, that clockwise flow of high pressure, we're probably going to see this thing sail right towards areas there of Central America and the Yucatan. So even if Bret survived, even if Bret became a hurricane, it would probably avoid the United States in the long run. But again, it's very early. You want to keep an eye on anything. Here's the satellite, the infrared satellite of Bret. This is causing the strengthening, this blow-up of convection right over the top of the center of circulation. But other than that, it looks pretty poor. You can see the disheveled appearance here. It looks like it's getting sheared a little bit and is not impressive, not like it was last night. This map is the shear tendency, and it's right on the edge of high shear up here and low shear down here, so it's kind of in the middle. Here's a better look at it on the lines you can see right there. This appears to be some shear blowing right over the top of the center of circulation, so the anticyclone appears to be a little bit to the south and west of where the center of Tropical Storm Bret is, and thus it is getting sheared. Although, honestly, it might be more mid-level shear. This is the mid-level shear tendencies, although right now they don't seem to show that much. Any kind of undercutting can affect a system, especially in its formative stages, like Bret. So the key messages for Bret right now, number one, it's forecast to approach the Lesser Antilles through early Thursday and then move across the islands Thursday and Thursday night as a tropical storm, not a hurricane anymore, but it will bring a risk of flooding from heavy rain, strong winds, and dangerous waves. Number two, given the larger than usual uncertainty in the track and intensity, it is too early to specify the location and magnitude of where Bret's hazards could occur, but everyone in the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands should monitor updates to the forecast of Bret, and we could see tropical storm watches for the islands later tonight. It is forecast to be a tropical storm moving through, so that could cause, like they said, rain, winds, and waves. But again, the expectation of Bret becoming a hurricane has decreased because of its disheveled appearance. Behind Bret, we have another tropical wave we're watching, and the models take this one a little more towards the north, although they did that with Bret initially. If a system's stronger, it's going to spin more towards the north. If a system's weaker, it's going to blow west. Now, Bret we thought would be stronger, so we originally thought it might turn a little more. Now it's going to be weak, move into the Caribbean, and probably die. So this system right now, the models are showing, is going to become stronger and maybe have more of a curve before the islands, but if it doesn't develop as much like Bret hasn't, it might be adjusted more and more west as time goes on. So if you're in the islands and you get under watches and warnings from Bret, you'll want to keep an eye on the system behind Bret. Here's the satellite, and again, not looking too good today behind Bret, but it is a spin in there, and that is what is forecast by the Hurricane Center to have a moderate to high likelihood of development in the wake of Bret as Bret moves on towards the islands there. On the map right here is the island of Barbados. So Bret is still a far way away, but getting closer, and this convection blowing up is keeping it in check or even causing the winds to increase a little. Obviously, what you notice on this map is the huge amount of storms and convections over Africa. This will all be moving out, and so we will watch that very carefully. The bottom line this afternoon, Tropical Storm Bret getting a little bit stronger this afternoon, but the long-term prospects are not good. It's probably going to move through the islands as a tropical storm, and then between the trough interaction and wind shear and some drier air, just get shredded apart and dissipate in the Caribbean Sea. And we've seen systems like that before that spin up and then they die. And so that's what we're thinking Bret's going to do. Behind Bret, this system, if and when this system became a tropical depression and then a tropical storm, it would be named Cindy. So we will see if this system becomes Cindy, and if you're in the islands, you'd want to keep on an eye on that as well, because again, it looks like this system could get stronger than Bret has, but again, we thought Bret was going to get stronger than Bret has. So either way, it's a lot to track for June 20th. It's still very early. There's a lot of uncertainty about this hurricane season. If we're in this El Nino, that could mean a very slow season, but you wouldn't know that based on how hot the waters are and based on our two systems in the central Atlantic, Tropical Storm Bret and our invest area to the east of Bret. So I'm Mike Naso with the latest on the tropics. We'll keep an eye on Bret as he moves towards the islands, and we'll keep an eye on the system behind Bret.